We are returning to the school committee meeting of August 20th, 2024. We are returning from executive session back to open session. If you will join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comments? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, starting out with grants and donations.
Great, thank you. We received a grant from the Department of Education for Elementary and Secondary Education. It's called the Social Emotional Behavioral Academy. This is a 3-year grant to infuse us with some professional learning opportunities. It will be both virtual and on-site coaching. It's going to help us build our district social, emotional, and behavioral multi-system tiered of support, MTSS, multi-tiered system of support. Sometimes I have to say the acronym first. You've heard us talk a lot about the multi-tiered systems of support academically when we're looking at kids, the curriculum they're receiving within the classroom and looking at that. So this will help us to build a multi-tiered system of support for students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Michelle O'Leary is the director. She's the director of social emotional learning, and she is the director who will be running this program with the Department of Education.
Have we worked with the Academy system through DESE before?
I don't know that we have, but I'm so proud of the directors in this building because when Kristen was in her role as a humanities director, she applied to be part of the high quality instructional material coaching that was being offered this year, and we received that. And then Ben did it as well, and we received the one for math coaching this year. Michelle wrote this one, and we are receiving it for social emotional learning. And as you know, we have had, that was one of the areas that took a reduction in our district. So we're really fortunate that we're being able to bring these pieces in. And it was, DESE actually wrote to us and said, we don't have many districts that are willing to take on three coaching initiatives at one time. Are you sure you're really ready to do this? And we said, yes, we have 3 different administrators who will be focusing on that.
So do we pick the coaches or does DESE?
DESE does.
And they assign them to work with one of our administrators?
Correct.
But they're also working with the teachers and the children?
Correct. Mostly the teachers, but yes.
I participated in one of the last 2 years around culturally responsive education, and we had some trainings online with our cohorts, and then someone also came to do work with us in person. There was a lot of really great stuff to help us grow and focuses on the thing that we needed. So I think it's a really great system that they have. I'm glad that we're taking advantage of these things that they're offering to help us grow.
It's 3 years, so
you
it's
had a good impression of the coaches that DESE picked?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's
It was really valuable for the teachers that were working, doing the same work with their kiddos in the classroom.
They really help us develop a plan. There are certain areas of social emotional learning and behavioral supports that we'll get to focus on, and 3 years will be able to help us write the plan, bring in some of those curriculum supports, develop it with our teachers, and hopefully see progress with our students.
It's amazing this is a 3-year
Yeah.
project, right? So you can
Yes.
truly see those changes
Yes.
over time and the
Yeah.
gains there. It's fantastic. And there's no funds
No
associated
funds.
with this,
Just
the
the
coaching,
coaching and
not
professional development.
just,
I know,
but
which is
this is the
costs so much, so
yes,
it's great.
exactly. Invaluable. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This
Yes.
is incredible.
And then will you click on the fresh fruit one? And then Erica Murphy, who's our Director of Food Services, she applied for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program through the Department of Education, and she was awarded that grant, which will bring fresh fruit and vegetables to the Atkinson Elementary School. Atkinson is our school that qualifies based on a free and reduced lunch program or based on the needs of the students. And you'll see that is the monetary amount that she'll be awarded to work with September and then October through June.
This wouldn't be the first time that they got fresh fruit and vegetables, would it?
They have fresh fruit and vegetables in their lunch program, but this will provide fresh fruits and vegetables throughout the day. So there might be carts in the hallway or being available during snack time and other times for the students. See, I asked Erica for a little bit more information.
And with that, I know through this grant, those offerings would only be available at Atkinson.
They're only available at Atkinson.
Are they available at the other schools through other funding?
Not throughout the day. This is throughout the day. So it offers fresh fruit and vegetables to the Atkinson students throughout the school day. She'll be working with Principal O'Loughlin to envision how they might be able to have this, but she sees perhaps veggie and fruit kiosks in the hallway where students can pick up a healthy snack throughout the day. Sometimes Department of Ed will award this to an area where perhaps the majority of the students might not have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. The Atkinson School happens to have qualified for that, and there'll probably be some opportunity for students to take them home if they'd like.
Be interesting to see how they make those fruit and vegetables kiosks work.
I know,
because that's-
right? The other thing that, it's not a grant, but I did want to tell you that Erica applied for what's called CEP. It stands for Community Eligible Provision. And the state did award it to us for both the Atkinson and the Thompson Elementary schools. And so what that means is that if for any reason the state starts paying for free lunch will always be free at Atkinson and Thompson School. Because those are our Title I schools. So she applied and was accepted into that program for those two schools.
That's incredible.
So right now, this through the state budget, lunch is included for everybody, but if that
Correct.
were to change in future years, it would still be included for those two schools.
Correct.
Get lunch and the breakfast snack, right? Because they get after
Correct.
the bell or whatever.
Yes.
They get after the bell and lunch is free.
Yes, which is great.
Yep.
So one obviously has financial implications that you have to
Yes, so
vote
let's
on.
do I have a motion to accept it's the fresh fruit and vegetable program?
I move to accept the fresh fruit and vegetable program grant for the food services for the Atkinson in the amount of $2,334.28 for September and $12,035.88 for the remainder of the year.
Second.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes?
You're here.
Is that loud? I'm sorry.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have our minutes of August 1st of 2024 that we need to approve. If everybody could take a moment to review those.
Yes, there's a fascinating typo in there for Ed's name. In my remarks, I think it called him Mr. Moscow Chipset.
You might have said that.
We should probably fix that one.
On page 4.
Okay.
In review, while everyone else is reviewing this, I just want to thank Michelle McHugh for doing such a great job of capturing our thoughts in their entirety and transposing those. I appreciate that deeply. Are we ready to?
Do I have a
Well-
motion? I'm sorry.
I suppose in my remarks, I didn't mean to say that it was fun and fundamentally wrong. But this, I agree with what Joe said, that this is really work well done, but it sort of seems odd. I'm sure I meant just a fundamentally wrong way. Line 5, I think it is, or line 6.
Sure, we can make that edit. All right, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes as amended? We have 2 amendments.
So moved.
Seconded. Oh, wait. Yeah, seconded, yeah.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. We have two other items. We have appointment of Stoneham Chandler Law as special school counselor and appointment of Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce, PC, as special school counselor. Ms. Lathrop, you want to explain a little bit of why these are on the consent agenda?
Sure. The first one of Stoneham, Chandler, and Law are our labor attorneys. We do use town council, Christine O'Connor, who many of you have met, but we keep them, we ask that you appoint them so that we can also work with them in case we have other labor issues that we need other advice, or if town council needs to consult with them, or if there was a reason that we might need to have another opinion for labor. And then the appointment of Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce are the attorneys, the council that we use primarily for special education.
Ms. Lathrop, we've been using these law offices previously,
Yes, we have.
and we've had good relationships, and they've been
We have very good relationships
Good to work
with both
with.
with both of them, and very good to work with. They work together, so both Stoneham, Chandler, and Law, and Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce have worked together on cases for us, and they have worked with town council as well. And Lynn has a great relationship with them.
So is this just a routine
It is
appointment that we
routine
should be doing?
appointment that you should be doing, appointing the councils
Okay.
that we employ.
Is it yearly? Would this typically be a yearly
This
thing?
would typically be
Okay,
a
so
yearly
just-
thing that you should appoint these councils.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Stoneham, Chandler, and Law, and Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce as special school councils for the upcoming school year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you very much. And then we will move into the superintendent's report on our budget status update.
Go. Start you off with a couple pictures first. Yeah. So the one on the left is just from Summer Academy. I think we talked about a little bit that last time we were here, and Ms. Ando's going to talk a little bit about it. So that's the left and the right, two pictures there, students fully engaged. And then the ones in the middle are from the National Night Out. You see Ms. Ando is running the ring toss there. And then Jackie Taylor, who's one of our, Jacqueline Taylor's one of our literacy coaches, and you can't see Nicole Rodelsky, who's the other literacy coach. They were behind the table. We had bookmarks, we had tons of fun, lots of kids visited the table. What was interesting was we had 2 tents, and we had to borrow the track and field. So every so often some people would go over like, do you have a track and field schedule? I'm like, why are they asking me that? And then we realized
I think so.
our tent said track and field. But it was a great night out, and we really thank the North Andover Police Department for putting it together. It was a bit of a cool night like tonight, but really well attended.
And we had super fun neighbors.
Oh, so-
Who
Who had a bubble machine?
Members there, Mr. Moskovich and Ms. Cormier, to be out in the community for any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a school committee had a tent there for the first time. Thank you to the school administration
The
for providing the
custodians.
tent.
Yeah,
so we
did a
were
great
there.
job.
It was good. We were there. I think it was our first time, obviously. So I think as we start to kind of perfect or work towards, what do we need to kind of pull in these students? We had bubble machines, so that helped quite a bit.
Yes.
We got had some kids come up, but I think we can definitely work on better, continue to improve on how we're engaging in the community and just being more available for those questions. But I think it was a great first step.
So,
And Kelly, just to correct it, we did do it last year. I
Oh.
was there last year.
Oh, sorry. Dave.
but Kelly's being a bit modest.
Did you have a
She
bubble
provided
machine?
The bubbles.
No bubble
And they were
machine.
very successful.
Okay.
They attracted lots of
Lots of
children,
kids.
none of whom asked either one of us any questions. Now,
Except about the bubbles.
not even, no, mostly it's nonverbal. So maybe we have to think about, if we want to attract attention from people over the age of, say, 10, we might need something in addition to bubbles. But they worked extremely well for the purpose that they were brought.
Thank you.
Next slide. And then here's your budget update, and so it seemed like you'd like this format. It'll get a little bit trickier as the months go on, or as we meet, but what you see on the bottom was the first time that we met to look at the budget, and then, so that's as of July 18th, and then the middle one shows you August 1st, the last time we met, and the one on top is our most current, which is August 19th. You'll see that some of our encumbrances are going down because we are spending some of that money. But right, as again, we started with $62,064,629, and currently we are at $51,709,318.99. We have not encumbered the salaries as of yet for our teaching staff. If you want to go to the next slide, Kristen.
Could I ask a question about this one?
Yes.
So the first one is 55,000, or million, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
483, et cetera, which is larger than our appropriation. I think I know why, but it'd be helpful if you could explain that there are sources of funds we're allowed to spend in excess of the appropriation, but what are they?
Our approach, are you talking about the one as of July 18th?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Available budget
At-
exceeds the appropriation, which I don't think is a problem, I'm just
Do we
curious.
have a-
Ed, there's a problem with your microphone.
Make sure you're
Move it.
speaking into your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our budget is 62 million.
Oh, yes, right, sorry, okay.
Yep, okay. So this is just this month, so you can see where we are right now. And just as a reminder, we won't have encumbered our teaching and teaching assistant salaries until August 23rd. So we were going to meet, this meeting was going to be on Thursday. I was hoping to be able to have it for then, but this is the first pay period. So those will be encumbered at that time. And just to remind everybody, when we talk about expenses, things that we pay for in maintenance, our equipment rentals, leases, custodial supplies, telephone, that's why you'll see some of the maintenance has moved out of encumbrances into years expended, because we have been purchasing some of the materials we need. Regular education is our contact services, all of our materials, memberships, and software licenses. Again, you'll see that has gone down because our secretaries are in and they are filling those POs for our schools. And then largely special education is our out-of-district tuitions.
I know we're only a month and 19 days in. Is this the rate of spend you would expect this far in? Has there been any surprises or unexpected items?
No, not really. This is about the rate of spend. What we are trying to do is be very cautious about what we're buying in the schoolhouses. This is, as I said last time, this is not our year for some new item or some wish list item. We are buying supplies. We are buying what we need. We are using the things that we already have. What will be tricky is when we encumber all of our salary money. So the next time that you see this sheet, you're going to see a much smaller available budget. When we encumber that, we have moved all of our teachers to the pay scale that they should be appropriated on. They have sent in their tuitions, reimbursements, if they're moving track lanes. So the next one will be a big change.
That's around like 40?
Huge change.
Huge change.
But then it'll give
As it
you,
should be.
yeah. But then
Yes.
it'll give you the budget that you know that it actually is for the rest of the year and kind of give you a
Correct.
more manageable
Correct.
number to track to, or
Correct.
definitive number.
Correct. So what we have done, and what, I know we have been trying to bring to you a more comprehensive budget so you can see all those line items. It is not quite as easy as one would think, but Tracy and I have met, and things that we've looked at are like the substitute line item. So how much money we've budgeted for substitutes. We've divvied that up amongst the schools based on their size, based on their average. We looked at the rate of substitutes that they used last year, and we'll be giving them their substitute line item so that they know what they have to work with.
So that's a very interesting question. Is it a separate line item? I
Within
think it
their
would be-
budgets.
yes.
They don't typically, if you were to look at a school budget right now, there is not a line item that says substitute. The substitute line item has been carried in the school district's budget. What we're doing is we have taken that line item, which was in the operating budget, and then broken it down by schools, and we will add it into their school budget so that they can see how much each school is spending on substitutes.
Perfect. I guess I had in mind something similar with when teachers work extra. Maybe that's another discussion for
That would be
another
another
day.
discussion. We're not there yet.
No,
Because that one's a little bit trickier, because that is,
You
it's
pay it
not
in the
always
same
money
check.
that we have budgeted, to be
Sorry?
honest with you. Extra hours are not always money that we have budgeted, so we are going to have to work on creating a line item of extra hours. And then what we do the same thing that we did for substitutes, look back and see what the school spent the last few years, and then make some determination on what we believe their budget should be for extra hours.
But as Kelly said, in the direction you're moving, a very favorable part of it is that before long, the budget will look like about $6 million.
Yes.
Which is the only amount that people are making, which is excellent.
Correct,
And then we can all see it much more clearly.
correct.
So,
And
just so I understand this,
Ed, make sure you're talking into.
oh,
the
I'm
mic.
sorry. So when money that's encumbered is expended,
We have no more.
I can't quarrel with you. But let's say it isn't all of it.
Yes.
If some of it is expended, so does that mean money moves out of the encumbrance column?
Into the expended
So
column.
the encumbrance does not include, this is encumbered but not expended.
Correct.
And the other is, used to be encumbered, now is expended.
Correct.
I'm on a run, right?
You are on a
I'm
run.
going to stop while I'm ahead. Madam Chair.
I think Dave had a question.
I did, thank you, Alyssa. Yeah, so Pam, we talked about this once before, and I don't expect it immediately, but at some point relatively soon, I'd like to see the grant money also accounted for, because that's what the district actually spends is more than this
Right.
operating budget.
Correct.
So I called it a sources and uses of funds document because that's what it's referred to in industry, but we need something like that eventually.
Correct. We have not been officially awarded our grants yet. Those usually will come in late September, early October. The Department of Education has shared with us what they intend to give us, which is helpful to know, but we have not officially been awarded our grants yet.
Okay, so until then, we can't really do it.
Correct.
Right, but at some point after that, we should, so that as a committee, we see all the,
Absolutely.
yeah, everything, right? All that comes in, all that goes out.
Correct.
Could I just comment on that point? I've been working with Tracy to develop ways of making it easier to make sense of the warrants. And she has now, when we see the expenditure, it separates it by account. And she and I have worked out a way that you see it grouped that way. So that means it shouldn't be much harder to get to that point with this. But when you look at the warrant, you'll see which items are out of the general fund and which are out of grants. So that's a big step in your direction, David.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just to give you a couple of updates, this is just I think you should have these. You may not have these slides. I'm sorry. We'll make sure you get those. That was my fault. I was working to the last minute. These are just some updates of some dates, but we have a new staff orientation this Friday, which is great. We're going to hold it right here. It will be all of the new staff in the district. North Andover Teachers Association will sponsor a breakfast and share some information, and then our directors will talk a little bit about some of the curriculum in the district. Our technology director will come and talk about technology. I think Alyssa, our chair, is going to come. Are you coming on Friday?
I am.
Yes, you're going to come on Friday. And then we would like to thank all the PTOs and PTACs in the district. They have generously funded lunch for the new staff on that day, which is great. And then opening day is going to be Monday and Tuesday for our professional staff. Grade 1 orientation you'll see. So just a couple of highlights, and we'll make this available to families. All the schools will send out information about those, but that just lists our dates. Our new students, all of our students come back on Wednesday. We'll talk a little about that when we get to middle school, but I do feel confident all of our students will be coming back on Wednesday.
They will.
They will.
Except kindergarten.
Except for kindergarten. Kindergarten doesn't come back officially until September 4th, and preschool doesn't come back officially until September 5th. I'm going to the next one. We've had a busy time hiring. We've hired 13 new teachers. We have 4 long-term substitutes. A long-term substitute could be someone who is filling in for a teacher who is out for the whole year, or maybe filling in for a teacher. Or we actually still have one open for an administrative assistant for a portion of the year. We have hired 11 teaching assistants so far, 1 nurse, 3 social emotional learning positions, so that would be like an adjustment counselor, or we have a social emotional therapist that is working with us, and then we've hired an athletic trainer. We do still have some open positions. It does look like a long list. Don't get too nervous because many of our administrators are in conversations to fill these positions, but they're still technically open. We have a special education teaching position at the middle school, a German teacher at the high school. We are still looking to fill 1 educational team leader. That would be a special education position who chairs our special education meetings within the buildings. Board certified behavioral analysis, you might have heard of them, is referred to as BCBAs. We have some long-term substitute positions still open, so that might mean that, again, we have a teacher that's taking off for some reason, a couple of months or perhaps the year. I don't think we have any positions left open that are full year. And we have 1 administrative assistant position open in a long-term sub. We still have some teaching assistant positions to fill, some noon attendants, and some substitute teachers. I think what could be interesting is, we reduced our teaching assistant position, but we also had many teaching assistants who participated in the voluntary and separation program, which actually left us with many positions to fill this year. So we're still working on that. We had today and tomorrow, Director of Personnel and Operations, Mr. Landry, has been doing substitute interviews, and we've had lots of people coming in, so hopefully we'll have a nice, robust substitute pool this year. And then on Friday, we are having as I said, our new teacher orientation, and that's just a little bit of their favors, a little goodie bag. Everybody gets a goodie bag, and some of the work we'll be doing.
And if I just want to add one comment, for those who may be interested in a noon attendant, I know the town is also looking for crossing guards, so it's a good opportunity to double up as a crossing guard and noon attendant if you wanted to take that route as well.
That's great. And I know that our noon attendant positions are posted on the North Andover Public Schools website, and I'm sure the crossing guards are posted on the North Andover Town's position.
And although it looks like a scary list because there's a lot of bullet points there, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
I've seen.
We have interviews in
I've
process.
seen much worse.
Okay.
Not to ask an obvious, but I'm going to ask the question.
Sure.
So all the open positions, as well as the ones that have been hired, those are included in the budget for this upcoming year, and
Correct.
we are budgeted for all of these
Correct.
positions, and there are funds available.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good
And
question.
I have one, Pam.
Yeah.
Like I noticed there's a German teacher opening there. Is something like that? What happens if we don't get anybody quickly enough?
That's a great question. It's a challenge that we're going to have. We have been fortunate. We have some good leads, we think. The teacher who is leaving the position is going to stay on for the beginning of the school year to help us a little bit. And we might, if we still struggle after that time, we might try to negotiate and see if she might be willing to stay a little bit longer.
Got it. Okay, so you've got
But
plans
she will
in
be
place.
starting the school year with us. I should have said that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I think I have one more, maybe. And then we had our leadership retreat, so that was all of the leaders in the district. There's about 25 leaders. We are very fortunate. The North Andover Historical Society was our host this year. We're very thankful to them. We were there 3 days, August 5th, 6th, and 7th. Is it Diane's Kitchen? Yes, so Diane's Kitchen is in the bottom of not the first floor of the Historical Society. If you have not gone, I would highly recommend everybody go and visit, and her food is exceptional. We're really fortunate. We had an Olympic theme this year. Kristen and her team did a beautiful job setting the stage. We, just much like the 5 rings, we had 5 goals, and one of the biggest one was building our team. As you know, there were many new leaders in the district, or some of us have changed some roles. So we built our team, we set some norms as a team, we reviewed our statistics from the school year, we created new goals for moving forward, and then we talked about raising the professional development bar. We had a little bit of fun, much like the Olympics, as each school went through their school improvement plan and looked at the progress they made towards their goals. They gave themselves either a gold, a silver, or a bronze medal. And I'm happy to say we had a couple golds, some silvers, and some bronzes. The middle picture is Erin O'Loughlin. She's the principal at Atkinson School, and Erin and Chris Raymond, the principal at Thompson School, and Ellen Peters, the assistant principal at both Sargent and Atkinson, participated in responsive classroom training for elementary this year. And so you'll see Erin there is leading us, showing us about the responsive classroom approach in elementary. And that other picture of Ellen and Joe Clark from Franklin School is their school improvement plan. And I think that's it for me. And then Kristen is going to give you a couple of updates on some of the academic work that's been happening this summer.
Sure. I'm continuing with the Olympic theme, mostly because I don't want to let it go. It was so much fun. And so, but these are teaching and learning updates for the summer. One of our major projects for the summer was run by Ben Cabrera, our math director, and it was the calculus project. We had 45 students participate in the calculus project, where they did 3 weeks of extra math in the summer. We had 45 students this summer, up from 8 students last summer. So we're so excited. I actually, Ben sent me this picture on my phone, and it made me tear up a bit, because this is the work. And so Calculus Project is a nonprofit organization that targets students that wouldn't normally be on track to take historically marginalized students that may not historically have had opportunities to take calculus in high school. And so really, really exciting stuff, and well done to Ben for coordinating. We had 3 full-time teachers. We had 3 teachers in the program, 45 students, and they all finished. So really awesome. We had a lot of students.
Did they like calculus?
Exactly. Well,
How do you not like calculus?
How do you not? Right.
Well, I know, but I'm sort of, mathematical. Maybe there are people that, hard to conceive, but maybe there are people that don't like it.
I think a lot of the intention is to create a math identity where you might not have historically had one. People who are historically identified female at birth aren't necessarily, black and brown students aren't always targeted for calculus. So it's about coming to an identity as a mathematician.
Right.
I'm not sure it's so much about love, but you know what I mean? And
There's a lot-
I bet they would
there's a
argue
lot
they
of
look pretty
smiles
happy.
around math up there.
Exactly.
No, when
Exactly.
you
But I
want-
think it's the developing the identity of a mathematician is what's really super powerful.
When you think of it as understanding change, it's really not so complex. It's when you try to memorize proofs that it gets a little tough.
We'll have to ask them.
No, I mean, there's no reason that they shouldn't enjoy it and grasp, sort of the basic idea that you're measuring how much things change over time.
And so it's the idea that we start with students in the middle school so that they would build up the skills that they needed to be on track. We had between 300 and 400 students enrolled in some sort of summer programming, whether it be extended through school year through special education, which included work at community programs, summer fun, the tiptoe into kindergarten and tiptoe into first grade programs, and also we had extended school year through special education programming, and about 165 students receiving tutoring support in order to keep them on track. We had about 125 students in summer academy for a week at the Atkinson School, and these photos are from that. And we also had students who came outside of the calculus project to North Andover High School for additional work during the summer. So we had a lot of students come in and do a lot of amazing work during the summer.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
How do parents know that these programs are available to them? For next year, how do the parents know all these amazing programs that are offered?
A really
through
good
the
question.
district
So
for the
extended
summer?
school year would mostly be through the special education department, and Lynn could tell us more about that. Summer academy, we generally target students who have certain who are at certain data points in there in order to give them a little bit of a boost for the next year. We reached out to most families that fell in that data range, but generally if someone reached out and said, can we join the summer program, we were like, sure. You know what I mean? And so absolutely, but chances are, I'm not sure, Summer Academy is through a grant through the DESE, and so year to year, we apply for the grant and hopefully get it. And so thank you for asking. A lot of professional learning. Our teachers are amazing, our teachers and our staff, and we had teachers from the high school working on genocide education. We had teachers 6 to 12 working on artificial intelligence and learning about artificial intelligence, how to make it work in school. We had math practices in a pilot group. We have a group of teachers piloting Eureka Squared for next year. We had almost 50 people participate in a week-long responsive classroom training, which Pam talked about some of our principals, but we had, I think, 25 at the elementary level and closer to 20-something at the middle school level work with responsive classroom. We have teachers writing curriculum for social studies and civics. We participated in the Essex County Learning Collaboration in their Power of Place, the DESE Instructional Leadership Institute, Ambitious Science Teaching, and the Inclusive Leaders Academy. So we have brilliant, brilliant teachers doing amazing work to grow their practice over the summer. And here's another photo from our leadership retreat. And so there's the team. We're really proud. You can see our goals again. And we're just I think Pam and I are so lucky to be leading this team into this school year. They're an amazing bunch of committed folks who really love the kids of North Andover and are very committed. So there we are in our tried to match t-shirts, looking like a team. And so gold medals all around. You can see on all the slides, everyone got a gold this summer. Thank you.
That's it for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, in the chair's report, we did reach an agreement. We had a wonderful negotiating team for the North Andover Food Services. Mr. Moskovich and Mr. Hicks led on the behalf of the school committee, that negotiating team. They were able to reach an agreement, and it is customary for the school committee to vote. We did vote in executive session, and we do bring that vote into public session. That was a unanimous vote, so we can go ahead and vote on that. So that agreement.
Do we need a motion?
We can make that motion. It doesn't hurt.
Sure. I move that we accept the agreement between the North Andover School Committee and the Food Services Union.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So nice work, Mr. Hicks and Mr. Moskovich. I know you put a lot of work and effort into that, and I'm glad that you were able to work collaboratively with the food services to be able to come to an agreement and put that contract into place. Thank you. All right, our next is our interim superintendent appointment. As we had discussed last time, Dr. Gilligan had resigned. We had appointed back in April Ms. Lathrop as our acting superintendent. When we negotiated her contract, we did put in there a provision that she could take the position as interim. I would like to propose that we do take advantage of that provision, that we could appoint her as interim, and I would like to make a motion that we appoint Ms. Lathrop as the interim superintendent of North Andover Public Schools.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
So traditionally, I mean, I've never been on a school committee that made this decision before, but usually there's a provision as to whether or not the appointee is allowed to apply for the position. Should there be language about that? And if so, I'd like to propose such language.
I think we're first going to discuss the interim appointment.
No.
I guess I don't know what you're
The
asking.
question is, sometimes an interim is appointed with the understanding that he or she cannot apply for the permanent position. And the language that you gave is vague,
Sure.
as in non-existent.
That language there wasn't any language that said.
No, but
She couldn't.
it just seems to me we ought to be explicit.
I think it would be in our search criteria. I don't.
But this is the appointment.
Yeah, I think.
Right. But there's nothing in the appointment that prohibits it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it seems to me it would be appropriate. I would like to move that she is welcome to apply, if that's all right.
well, I think we have a motion on the table.
The second, it's an amendment. Should be explicit.
So you would like to amend the motion so that if Ms. Lathrop were to serve in the capacity as interim superintendent, that does not preclude her from applying to the permanent superintendent position if she so chooses.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So we're still in discussion. So I just want to say to acting superintendent Lathrop, thank you very much for how you have stepped into a very a difficult situation and stepped in and made decisions and put kind of frameworks into place to help move our schools forward in this short time. So I just want to thank you very much for your efforts and recognize what you've done during this time period and pulling together the team to help you drive through these decisions. So thank you.
Could I add to that two things that really impressed me was the thoughtfulness that when you present something, it's always clear that you've really thought about it. And then the fact that you explain it to us, then you reach out to the community, which I think are both very impressive, and I appreciate it.
And I would like to expand on that as well. The intelligence, the humbleness, the amount of work that you've put into this, the leadership that you've shown to the administration, the staff, the faculty, has been outstanding. I think we've all just been I think impressed just doesn't even put it into words of what you've done. And I guess I should ask too, before we even take a vote, if we were to vote, would you be accepting of the interim position?
I would. Thank
Okay.
you. It's been was a long spring, but I've learned a lot, and there are wonderful people that work in this community, from in all of the schoolhouses, in central office, in the town, and we all know we had some challenges, but I have really been impressed by the work ethic of everybody, and I would welcome the opportunity to continue working in this capacity.
And Alyssa, if I could contribute a little bit here.
Yes.
I was the one who approached Ms. Lathrop in the middle of the crisis to take over. I want to personally thank her for stepping up in such a big way.
Thank you.
It was really a very tough time for us. I don't have to repeat that. Everybody knows that. But I really have been impressed with your ability to come up to speed on the financial operations while not neglecting the educational operations under those circumstances. And I also think that, we're not only impressed, but B, we're in a situation where bringing someone else into the interim role would really set us back, since you have momentum going, and we are all happy with that momentum. So I just wanted to add that point.
Thank you.
I think yes to all that. I don't want to repeat that. I think the grace and dignity that you brought to the role and to us has been incredible. And at the beginning of the school year is always such a hopeful time for us teachers. It's the first day of school is my second most favorite day of the year, after the last day of school. But it's you've created very quickly a culture and a place where that hope and that excitement can still exist. So thank you for that. You've done a really great job of taking care of your staff and creating a place where we know our teachers are going to be and our staff are going to be to make the very best learning experience for our kids. So I really appreciate the hard work that you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate what you have to say. I am just going to continue to say that the hard work comes from the people that are working with the children. Our staff is exceptional, and they, this was a challenge for them, and an unknown can feel scary and can feel frightening at times, and our staff continued to show up, and they continued to take care of the students, and there's an amazing leadership team, and I knew them this year, but I got to know them in a new way. And we have created there's lots of new people in central office, but it's a team that wants to work really hard for this district, that cares genuinely and deeply and passionately about the children and about the work here. And we're all, we talked a lot about the Olympics and a lot about team sport, and we made a little fun about it, but we also realized that the team is really important, and the people that are cheering and on the sidelines, and even when they can't compete, sometimes they suit up and they're there and they're ready and they're supporting. And much like the rowing team, that if one rower is rowing in the wrong direction, that boat is just not going to go where it needs to go. We all need to get our oars in the water and sort of row together. So I just want, I appreciate that, and I can take credit for where I believe I do have some leadership skills, but I want everyone to know that this district is working hard and staying afloat, because there are really good people that are working in this district, from students working with students directly, food services, custodial staff. I mean, when I tell you that, and I probably should have said this in my report, the custodial staff has been working overtime, literally and figuratively, to get our schools ready. Our secretaries are back in business, and purchasing, and just everybody is doing a really incredible job for this town, and families. And we've really seen parents step up. I mentioned the PTOs are helping us. People have come together, and in hard times, that is what you expect from a community, for people to come together and put some of their feelings aside sometimes and work really hard. And it's why I came here. It's what I believe in this community, and it's what I continue to see happening.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, I offered to make a motion. You haven't asked for a second.
Do we have a second on the motion as amended?
Oh, I'll second it. Or I'll accept the motion, the amendment to the motion.
Okay.
I couldn't hear you, Joe.
I'll
Sorry.
second it or accept the amendment to my original motion.
Okay. perfect.
Either way.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to vote on the motion as amended? Okay. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And thank you, Ms. Lathrop, for taking on the position of interim superintendent and the stewardship of North Andover Public Schools.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah, we're going to have a good year.
All right. We are moving on. We need to have a discussion on the superintendent search. As you know, this is new to all of us. None of us have been in this position before. So this is a place where we are exploring and navigating and discussing. I did reach out to our field rep for the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They did send some information. I did add that to the packet. But the main reason I added this to the packet, you can see on, let's see, it is superintendent search process. And I think this is just a nice kind of overview of what we're looking at as far as the search process. And I think that's just kind of what we need to wrap our heads around as far as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And I think really step 1 is deciding, where we want to begin this and where we want to begin as far as hiring a consultant. I've spoken with the town manager and gotten some ideas of how we can begin the process of hiring a consultant, how we, put bids out. I know MASC does that work. The Collins Center does that work. I know there's another organization. There's also private organizations that do that work. So I'm opening up the discussion on, I guess, how we want to proceed and kind of how we want the timeline to look. We're not making any motions. We're not making any decisions. This is just an open discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
The selection of a new superintendent is, by the very nature of our positions, one of the top 3 things that we do by law. So it's of incredible importance to us as a committee. And we have, I believe, my feelings are that we have an obligation to ourselves and to our community to dive deep into that process and embrace it and do the very best job we can at it to find the very best person to be our next permanent leader. That for me I like how they describe this in phases, and I think this first phase, regardless of the technical approach we end up developing or who's going to help us do this, and I'll have comments about that in a moment. I think the first step of any process is to really take a good hard look within us and within our community and do empathy interviews and listening sessions with our administrators, our staff, our teachers, our kids, our community members. Although we are the ones who ultimately make the choice about our next educational leader, we need to understand what it is that we want, who we want to be in the next few years or in 10 years from now as a town and as for our schools. Like, we have to have that vision of where we want to go and like who we want to be, and develop the profile of the leader we want to then be at the helm of that, and then go out and look for it. But we can't do that work until we know what it is we want. And as always, leaving open that we might have to look outside of us to find whatever that profile is and those attributes are, but also might be among the system already. And both those things can be true at the same time.
I'd like to basically add to that, that sort of my picture of this seen from afar is that you get a committee that, first of all, only has 2 of us on it, and then you have a whole bunch of other people on it. And I think the step that Joe just described, I think we should do it, all of us, not just 2 of us. And I had in mind something very similar, that we hold a series of sessions where we invite people, just what he said, we invite, everybody from the Board of Selectmen to the principals to the teachers to come to us talking about, again, what Joe said, what do people in the community want to see in our schools?
So
And
a
then
series of open meeting sessions.
Series of open meetings, that's right. It could be like with the teachers, since teachers, assuming that we could be there, it might not be here. We might have one at the high school, and we'd meet at the end of the school day. It would still be a public meeting, anybody could come, but it would be convenient for the teachers to actually be there.
I wonder.
Excuse me, just if I could finish, so that I guess what the 2 of us are saying in slightly different ways, but it's really very similar, that we would think about, say, 6 weeks to 2 months and a series of sessions, and we think about who do we want to invite, how do we make it easy for lots of people to participate.
Okay, all right.
Well, this sort of leads me into like how we then go about this technically. One, I understand the nature of why it would be a good idea to make it an open public meeting, and I think there's value in that. I also want to make sure that people who don't always feel comfortable in being in that space have an opportunity to participate as well. So there might not need to be some times when it's not necessarily open. And I think a consultant or a group that knows how to who's done this thing often and had success in it, and knows how to structure those listening sessions and brings in people who are good facilitators and who ask the right types of questions and who know how to run the process and set them up and get as much feedback as possible would be really helpful for us.
So we could even combine the 2, right?
Yeah.
So we could have a consultant, but lead them to say, we want to do a series of open sessions, and maybe in conjunction with a committee of...
How do we go about creating that
Right.
structure so that we can hear all the things we want to hear?
Right.
So I've talked about this with the director of the MASC, and he said they would do this at no charge, at least up to a point, so we could afford it. And he said, for example, he might come here, and he's done it often, spend a whole day, so we could have several sessions in a day with different groups. I agree with Mr. Hicks that ideally some of those would work better in private, but I'm not sure that that's consistent with the law if all 5 of us are there.
Oh, no,
It doesn't
no.
need to be all 5 of us at once.
I'm sorry?
A listening session would not necessarily have to be all 5 of us. For a closed meeting or a more private one, people might want to only meet with one of us, or maybe not even talk to us, or only want to talk to the outside person. Like, we have to, because
Well,
for whatever reason. I just want to have different formats and different venues for people to share their ideas, because not one thing will necessarily fit, and we don't want to create any barriers to people sharing.
so he suggested that one of the things he's done in the past is done this without any of us.
Right. That's what I mean. Like,
Right.
that
So
might
then
also be
he
an
would,
appropriate thing.
so there could be such sessions where he would listen, ask questions, and then summarize it for us. Ideally, it seems to me, it's going to be more meaningful. Someone's going to make a bigger impact on us if they're talking to us.
Right.
And if we can go back and forth, they say, well, I want X, and one of us can say, I'm not quite sure I understand that. I mean, that kind of back and forth could be extremely helpful.
Yes, Kelly.
Looking at making our next decision, as Mr. Hicks pointed out, this is one of the most important things that we do as a school committee. We can't get this wrong.
Right.
And so with that kind of way of looking at it, to me, this is a place for us to bring in people who've done this before. And if that is, and so if that's looking at, you've listed a few different people, Alyssa, whether it's, MASC, their search committee, or a different group, like we should bring someone in who's done this. We're not doing something unusual, but with someone who's done a thorough search, where I think we need to spend our time is defining what, before anyone else can find someone for us, is what do we need? What is our school, and that's not our decision, but it's what is the
Right.
school committee or the school community need? And what's the person, the profile that we're looking for based on what our goals are for the school committee and the school. So we need to make sure that we have the right profile to look for. And I think some of that ties into those listening sessions and things that we're talking about, but I feel we've got to get that right, and maybe someone can help us do that, but we've got to get that right, but then make sure that we 1,000% get this search right and thorough.
Right.
Like that's
Well, and I think
Want
what,
Listen
hold on.
sessions first, and then.
well, I think that this is somebody who guides us through that. This
right?
is
like yes, but
this
that's
is
the sausage.
This
part.
is
We
what
can-
they do.
yeah.
But I think one of the big things, and one of the huge elephant parts of this is, are we able to fit any portion of this in a budget?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in that, if you want to look at line items and, you have a school committee budget. It is very small. You have a line item.
In the past, it's been around 20 or 25 in there. Part of that pays for our membership in MASC and for and the things that we need to do there. But we haven't often used it for our own, none of us have gone to the conferences in the past couple of years. We haven't been really spending all of that. So
It
we should
didn't
look
roll
at.
over.
No, and you used and you used it appropriately. But I mean, if it's there this year, I think that this could be an
Yeah, there's some money
appropriate
there for
use
that. Right.
of that money
And then you
for
could look
us.
at other line items and
Because I think the number that this is less than what that number is.
Okay. That's
If
good.
I remember correctly, I think that number is around 20 or 25. I'm thinking this is around 7,500 to 10. I could be completely wrong
I think it depends on if we go
with who we go with.
with who we go with.
But we do have some,
Okay.
and using the school committee line item for this would be more than appropriate to help us
Yeah,
do this.
definitely.
So I was.
Alyssa, can I make some comments here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we definitely would be very appropriate, and we certainly should make use of that. One of the things I wanted to say is, and I'm not sure of the best format, perhaps it's these early interviews you guys have just been discussing, but we want to make sure that all stakeholders that in the district have input here. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned, but I think is important, are people like the finance committee and town manager's office and town council. Because when you get right down to it, the superintendent has to work closely with all of those, right? And so we should get their input in some fashion. And especially given what we've just gone through with a financial crisis, I think it's important criteria for the superintendent to be conversant and with financial operations. That I think is a pretty important attribute that we need to have.
Well, and I think that's where the search consultant comes in, because they're very versed in all areas that the superintendent needs to be focused in, and making sure that we're hitting all of those stakeholders that need to feel comfortable with this decision and have some input in the overall goal of the profile of the leader that we're selecting.
Could I just say that when I went to the MASC training, I was impressed with their presenters. And so I would suggest, given your astute comment about the budget availability, since we have a group that at least one of us has a favorable impression of and has a very favorable price, why don't we take them up on their offer of bringing somebody here for a day and see what we think of them? If we're not satisfied, we go to somebody else, but if we're impressed with them and they're willing to do this as part of our dues, why wouldn't we go that way?
I don't think it hurts to get other quotes and information if that doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah, I think the Collins Center is could be an appropriate choice there. Most likely within our targeted price range, already approved through the state to use. So when we think about procurement and like who we can go to,
Which group, Joe?
Collins.
Center.
Oh, yeah.
I think like
I'm so old I actually knew Collins.
well, I think what I'm hearing, and please everyone disagree with me, is that we need to figure out two things at the beginning here. Is like, one, I think I'm hearing that we internally don't have the manpower, the wherewithal, the knowledge base, or whatever it is to do the search effectively, and we need some outside support. And we should figure out how to get that support in the right way, and that works for us. And second, in terms of looking at what that outside support could look like, one of the attributes we want is to make sure that they see that we want to engage heavily with our entire community in figuring out what is it that we need in our next educational leader, and making sure that we are that is at the center of our work to begin. Because if that's not part of what they want to do at the beginning, then we don't want to work with them, right? And and I think by acknowledging those two things, that helps us give a little bit more direction and on next steps. Yes, we want to make sure we have someone in place to take over, whoever that might be, on July 1 of next year, I would think. But that doesn't mean we need to post a position in middle of October and have people like submit resumes by middle of November. Like there is a season for the thing, and it goes over the course of the school year too. Like we want to be mindful of like doing things the right way the first time. So, and just like there's a lot of stuff.
Right, and I think that's where the consultant comes in
Yeah.
too. When we say, okay, this is when we need to have it by, they're very aware of, okay, these are
Helping
the
us build that
timelines
timeline.
that you need to hit.
So I asked the time question of the head of MASC, and he said, I said, well, like if we were able to start it November or December, would that be soon enough? He said, yes, don't wait till February or March. So do we have, say, 2 months to do this? I think the answer is yes.
And I would advocate for us to consider all of these possibilities, right? Let's get, in a sense, let's get a pitch from MASC, let's get a pitch from Collins, and I forget who the third one is you mentioned, but we should really put the time in and evaluate all three of them and see where and if they should contribute.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would suggest we should write up, maybe since Joe and I sort of suggested more or less the same thing, we should come up with a draft. Was that what we're going to ask them, or do you just want to do it as the chair?
I think this is where the chair
Alyssa?
then hears what the committee said and takes
Okay.
the next steps appropriately.
That's fine.
I think I can take the next appropriate steps
And
to.
these consulting firms should have these things. We're not
Yes.
asking for
This is not
anything.
about-
Right,
every
we're not
other school
reinventing the
district
wheel
is-
here.
There should be a wheel out there.
Right.
We need to find the wheel. We just have to tell them which way to roll it. And that's what we need
Yeah.
to find out in terms of what's our goals in the position. Right, but this is something we should be able to.
We
they
need the
should be
wheel
able
that fits us.
Yeah, give us their plan and we can compare their plans.
Right. All right, yeah, so I can reach out to a few of these and get some pricing. And we can get a better idea of what direction we want to go towards, and I can work towards that. And then we can bring this back to the table for further discussion. All right. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have what you need, given the need to not put this off too long, do you have what you need so that we can take a vote at the next meeting?
I think it's going to be a determination of how quickly I can get everything back. I don't think our next meeting is till September 12th, maybe? So I think that gives us, that gives us a little bit of time.
I was thinking about the first read, second read problem. Does this count as first read?
Well, I think we have to get approval on any bids.
Yeah.
So I think there's more of a process than a first read, second read.
Well,
Well,
but
we'll have to-
what
we'll
I'm
have to
getting
investigate
at
the
is
process.
Right.
that if we decide on what we want to do, if it would be nice if at the end of that meeting, you could go out and ask formally for bids. Or would we need then to wait 2 more weeks so that it's a second meeting or second discussion as opposed to the first? Does this count as an initial discussion so that if we're ready to vote on that next time we could do it?
So I'll offer an opinion. I don't think it does because we're nothing.
Yeah.
To have a first read, second read, we have to have bids in front of us.
Right, and we don't have that. This is just a preliminary discussion of.
Yeah, I think the
Not to
chair-
decide on the bids, Dave, just to be able to send out for them.
Well, I think that can be a vote for authority. That doesn't need a first read.
Okay, that's the answer to my question.
Yeah.
Then
there you
shall
go.
we authorize you to do that formally? To seek, I don't
Well,
know.
that would be fine. I mean, if we have the discussion and we're then ready for, then we would put out a request which could be ready for the second meeting. That would work. I just wouldn't want, what I'm trying to avoid is to have to wait 4 or 5 weeks before we can send
So
out a
I think we
bid.
can do, are you seeking a motion to give the chair authority to seek out pricing of consultants on behalf of the committee?
Do you think that's necessary?
Yeah, I mean, I
If
think
you
this
think
is
it's
just.
necessary,
I think
fine,
this.
but-
It's just informational. I'm not signing
Oh.
any contracts. I'm
We
not.
all have confidence in you.
I think that
Yeah.
comes under the duty of the
Right.
chair to do.
Right. I think if I was signing a contract, I think
no,
if I
we're
was,
all set.
and we're not to that point yet.
No, it's all right.
Right,
No,
Yeah.
we're just
I think
asking
we're
for
good.
bids.
Yeah.
I think she can do that.
Yeah. All right. All right. I appreciate all the input on that. Okay. Let's move on. We have Kittredge Project School Building Appointment Recommendation. We had, excuse me, Dr. Mealy was our Kittredge Project School Building appointment. He is not able to fulfill that commitment at this time, so I am looking to appoint Greg Landry to that position. And I move to appoint Greg Landry to the Kittredge Project School Building appointment.
I'll second that, but I have a question. Have you
Yes.
spoken with him? Do you know if he'll take it?
Yes. Yes. Yes and yes.
Yes and yes? I couldn't hear. Yes and yes?
Yes and yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So you have a second, Alyssa.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Landry.
All right, Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. The next item is an agenda discussion. If I can, is it in here?
We're on Meta right now. It is. It's after. Keep going. After. There.
Okay. So in here, Mr. Hicks and I had some discussion on reformatting our meeting agendas. I've also sent it to Ms. Lathrop, and she has added some comments and suggestions. The purposes of reformatting our meeting agendas had a few reasons behind it. One, if you'll notice under communications after public comment, we had some school committee discussion on public comment. One of the things that we've done in the past is after public comment, we've just kind of moved on. And I think we felt that it was important that people who make public comment feel that they are heard and that their comments are being considered. So this would allow the school committee to have some discussion. It isn't a back and forth with the community, but an opportunity to maybe have some discussion to address those comments that are brought before the committee. So that was the purpose of that.
So they would hear our thoughts,
Yes.
but we wouldn't be allowed that doesn't include their commenting on our comments, or or are asking them follow-up questions?
Well, the chair always has the authority to do that if they were to so choose. But I think that's done with caution and thoughtfulness. But I think I think the purpose is to say, we've heard your comments, we're taking into consideration, and we're having discussion on them.
That sounds like a good idea. I can understand why our silence could be misinterpreted as meaning we weren't really all that interested.
Right.
Well, I think also.
So I have a question, Alyssa, on that one.
Yes.
So I've long thought that having public comment at the beginning and the end seemed like awkward and unnecessary. What I would be concerned about in this is that they're right after each other, so you know what I mean? Like, in other words, very often we receive public comment at the beginning of a meeting, and then much of that is addressed in the meeting. So I'm just wondering whether we really need to continue to have it twice.
Well, I think oftentimes people make public comment and then they leave. There's not a lot, people don't stay for the entire thing. I think we also have if somebody were to come in and make a public comment that's being addressed, I think we have the authority to say, this is on the agenda for item number this under this report. We're going to be touching on this more thoroughly later on in the meeting.
And that could, and I just want to put out there that although there is the opportunity for some discussion, it might not always be necessary or warranted.
Right.
And I think the response could be, thank you so much. We're going to be talking about that later on the agenda. Like that, just because it's part of the thing doesn't mean it has to always happen for an extensive amount of time. But sometimes it feels like we know what we would want to say in that moment and we don't, and that feels icky somehow. We want to sort of remedy that.
Right.
Okay. Do you still think we need the?
I do.
Yeah,
I
you
do
need
at the end
need
because
to-
sometimes we
Yeah.
make decisions or things at the end, and people ought to have a right to
Comment on that.
then and not have to wait 2 more weeks to say, I'm angry at you for the thing you did before, or thank you for doing the thing you did before. Sometimes they want to say it right away.
All right. I was just throwing it out there.
No, I appreciate it. That's
Yeah.
that's the purpose of
Yeah.
this discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think looking at that, because I had a similar reaction, but I think it's nice to I agree with having both of them on there, because I think it doesn't always happen, right? In some cases, sometimes we don't get any public comment, so obviously there'd be no discussion. Sometimes public comment might be on something completely unrelated to anything on the agenda or we're thinking about. At that point, we might want to respond or not. So I think it's nice. It gives us the flexibility
The
to do that.
option.
Yeah.
Right.
Or to not respond at all.
Right. And this is an item that I would like the committee's input on. I've added this under. Right now it's after student representative report under communications under number 4. I've moved it down a little bit just to allow, sometimes we've had it like right after the Pledge of Allegiance. Sometimes people aren't able to be in here right away. Then they come in wanting to make their public comment and they're just a few minutes late. This allows a little bit of leeway time for those who did really want to make their public comment and just couldn't get in here, those 30 seconds after we did the Pledge of Allegiance. So, I mean, we can move it up. That was just my 2 cents. We can move the student representative report after public comment and school committee discussion. That still gives a little leeway after consent agenda. I'm open to input on that.
I actually like the move.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion. I go either way.
Okay. Yes, Ed.
Oh, never mind. I see it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. The other thing I was going to bring up with the student representatives, you'll see there's a little footnote. I'd like to invite one of the student reps to stay through each meeting for input, and they can report back to the other student reps. Maybe they could rotate through the meetings. I know one of the things that was brought up before is they wanted to be able to be more involved. I think this would allow them to be more involved in the school committee meetings and having more of an input in what's going on in the district. So I wanted to give them that option of being able to have a representative stay throughout the entirety of the meeting and have an input and a say.
Yes, I think I love hearing about the things that happen at the high school, and I don't want that to end. But also, the experience of the student matters to the decisions we make, and I would like to move us in the direction. I think this is the intent of why the state makes us do these things, of including them in the conversation about the decisions that are made, and moving towards seeing them more as a non-voting member participant versus someone who just tells us what's been happening. Like, I want to hear all the wonderful things that are happening still, because it makes me so happy. But like, it should be a legitimate seat at the table too, to share on behalf of students. I think that's the intent of the state rules.
Yeah, and I would like that too. I think they would like that. And I think that gives them, I mean, they're on student council because they want that leadership experience, and that gives them the experience too of knowing what it's like to sit on a community board and being a part of that. So I think we can bring that up to them and give them that option.
Right, they're all always welcome, but it would be good to have, you're trying to say have one designated each meeting to stay.
Right, and maybe
Right.
they can rotate through between the three of them, so it's not the same person every time.
Yep.
And it's not just staying, it's sitting at the table
Right.
and being a non-voting member.
Yes.
So they would be able to have a discussion, raise their, bring up any points as we go through and talk about anything. They just wouldn't have a vote.
Exactly.
Can I make a comment on one of the other things in number 5, or are you going to say something else that I should wait? I can wait.
Hold
will
your
wait.
thought. All right, I will move on to number 5. We have
we weren't there yet. I'm sorry.
we weren't there yet, but I'm getting there. Recognitions, communications, roundtable. Of course, we always have the recognitions. Roundtable reports, and this was something that Ms. Lathrop put in, and I thought was a really great idea. It's an opportunity for the table to share information. For example, school committee members could report out on any events that they attended, community forums. The central office members could comment on as well on any items. This would be an opportunity for us to share a roundtable forum on those types of things. We'd have any upcoming school events, community events. We could have calendar items in there of upcoming events, school community chats, things like that. Joe, I would welcome your comment.
I don't know if this belongs there or later around in the superintendent's report. And I just want to recognize that we get lots of wonderful things about happenings at the high school. And I want to hear some of the same wonderful things that kids are experiencing at our other schools. So like, we've had the robotics team in, and we've had Beauty and the Beast came last year and sang for us. But like, I would have loved to also hear a song from Newsies. I would also love to hear from kids at Atkinson and Thompson come in and share what they've been learning. Like, so is there a way we can build a schedule where each of the schools comes during what way we have 10 months? So like, can we get a school each month to come and share something about who they are as a school and what they've been working on, something amazing about that? I don't know like how we can organize that, but I want to know more about what our little ones are experiencing too.
I think there's a couple different ways you could do that. I've had experience where, just what you said, schools take turns, they sign up for a month, and so what they've done is sometimes they have like a lot of the elementary schools also have a student council, or they have some sort of clubs
They have the race
in their
reps.
schools. Sometimes they come and they lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they give a little report about some of the things that are happening in their school, which is nice. We have the nightly newsletter, and there is a school that's highlighted every month in the nightly newsletter. That could also be their same month that they come to school committee meetings. There's lots of different ways, but I think one of you might have mentioned to the high school students that perhaps they also sort of became, like buddies to an elementary school, and it was their job to learn a little bit about the elementary school, but we certainly can, and I think you're right, hearing from some of the kids. It's a little bit later, so I'd want them to come on first.
Absolutely.
Because they're little.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have them to come in and do the Pledge of Allegiance and that would also bring the elementary school students into the meeting and have it right at the start.
So similarly, I haven't seen a principal here at all. Having worked with principals in the past, I know that they often go to school committee meetings in other districts. Generally, probably wish they didn't as much. But everyone, just Joe's idea about one school every month with the students, why not one principal every month? So over the course of a year, each principal has come here and had a chance for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to tell us what he or she was trying to accomplish. maybe we could do that in terms of talking about the school improvement plan.
They did that,
hold
they've
on.
done that in the past.
Yeah.
You'll have
Well-
that.
Yeah.
So you were, was
Well,
it
I was
April?
just going to say that when I was working on the education reform law, we wrote into it, in fact, it was my idea, not only that the school improvement plans, that there be such plans, but that they be discussed with the school committee and voted on until your association took them out. But it's still a good idea.
To
they
approve
still
the
come
school
in.
improvement plans. We usually come in the fall, and so our plan would be this year for the school, for the principals to come and give you a recap of their goals from last year, and then what they've accomplished, and then to present their new plans.
And do you do how many?
We did them
One-
all
one-
last year in one night, which was a little,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
a little
If we break it up,
aggressive.
yeah.
We might break that out a little bit. So our elementary, so the way it worked last year was our elementary had, I think, 3 main goals that they all elementary schools were working on, and then each school had one individual goal. It did get a little lengthy, so we'll definitely,
I was thinking
So-
ABCC and the middle and the high school one night, and
probably,
the 1-5s
1-5s
another night.
another night.
Well, I guess I mean, I have no problem with that for the plan, but then I guess I would say each principal got one time during the year that he or she came and talked about what he or she was trying to accomplish.
Well,
Yeah.
that
Might
could
be-
also go under 9 presentations.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't thinking of which one it came
Right,
under.
yeah.
I was just thinking that it's something that I think would make sense. And I'd like, as you constructively thinking about
Right.
this, that'd be something else to add
Put
in.
in there.
My goal in the comments is to make sure I wanted to build in those, take the time to build in moments of joy, because it's the things that make us really happy. We always say it's the best part of the meeting, and I want to have as much of that as possible. So just that's my inspiration and my motivation.
Yeah, so I like that idea of building that in, and I think when we do those, yeah, I agree, we'd have to move them up in the meeting just because they're younger, and we need to get them out sooner. But I do like that. And then we'd stick to, central superintendent and central office updates with around the district, budget updates, anything else that need to be put in. School committee and chair updates. Right now, we need to stick with our financial discussion, special education advisory committee, because we need to make sure that those 2 things are staying up to date and on the agenda. And then we can add other things as they come up. Of course, school building committee updates as of now. Those are going to be our consistents, our presentations. We've changed old business to continued business.
Couldn't think of one before.
New business, public comment, and then we can discuss our next meeting if there's anything that school committee members would particularly like discussed or on the agenda. That would be the time to bring that up, and then we could adjourn at that time. So if there's anything else, any other comments, anything else you'd like to see on that, but that is the proposed. I don't think we need to vote on this. This is just for discussion, proposed new agenda, and then we could start implementing this.
Yeah, it's a great framework to then.
Sounds
all the
good.
Topics can go in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right, Madam Chair, that this structure of the meeting is under the purview of the chair and the superintendent. So
Okay.
I think it's great, and
All
you
right.
get to decide.
All right. I just wanted to open that up for any other comments before we put that into action.
Sounds good to me.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move on to the school building committee updates, starting with the middle school.
It's been a long couple of weeks at the middle school. If you had gone in a couple of weeks ago, you would have seen a lot of stuff happening, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Some spaces in the middle school still look like that. However, we had our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing inspections today. Everything went well. All the affidavits around those are ready to go as well, except for the electrical, because the electrical had to wait for the fire alarm testing to be completed today. So part of the new building project is that we have a new addition, and they put in, obviously, a new fire alarm. And then we have the old building, and we have to program that to make sure that when you trigger a fire alarm or a fire alarm gets triggered, it pops up on the board in the in the right spot to tell firefighters where to go and to make sure that's all working. That programming is happening right now. If you were at the middle school, as I was, to drop William off for football or for cheer practice or whatever, you would have heard the fire alarms going off at the middle school. Normally that's a bad noise. Tonight it's a very happy noise because they are testing that to make sure it works. Because we're expecting that fire inspection tomorrow, and then we can get our whole building inspection done tomorrow and get our temporary certificate of occupancy. What that then means is we've mobilized, they've already started cleaning the addition because that's under the contractor. We're mobilizing our cleaners to come in this weekend, in the next few days, to wipe down everything, to make sure everything is sparkling clean. We have movers coming in to move all the everything back to where it belongs, and furniture being delivered into the classrooms where they belong. Whiteboards are supposed to be up this Friday. The internet wires the data things are being dropped through the ceilings now. Mike Grant is ready to plug and play all the things so that we have even more internet coverage in that part. The wireless does still work. It does come all the way over from the old part, but that would be great to have that there. All this to say that we are, as of this point, it seems like things are going to be great on Monday morning. Good to go. Could something happen? Potentially. Once we know what's going to happen, we will be sure to make that announcement very clearly for the entire community. But right now, after my building committee meeting today, I'm feeling a lot more at ease than I have been in the past couple weeks. So we're making really great progress. So thank you to Collier and to the contractors for listening to the thing that we need to get this done, because we were very clear about this we need to have our teachers in on Monday morning to do the work of getting ready for kids on Wednesday. There's no wiggle room. There's no, we can come up with something, but no, absolutely not. And with that being said, it is still a construction project and will be a construction project until January. We'll have kids in one spot, and then they'll be, the 8th grade is not going to be in their same space as they usually are. They're going to be in the new addition, and then they're going to move back to their original place, and the 6th grade is going to move over there, and we're going to do work in those parts. There's going to be some ongoing work on the roof. There's going to be some things that might not be perfect next week in the new addition. It just might not be. It will be 100% safe for kids to be in, and for our teachers to be in, and for our staff to be in to do the important learning. But it's not going to be 100% done. And that was never the plan. We always knew that temporary certificate of occupancy happens in August, and final occupancy with all the punch list stuff happens in mid-September. And we have some ongoing projects until the end, until January. So Mr. Gonsalves has been great about making sure that he is ready, and he's always thinking through emergency plans to make sure that kids will be able to learn where to go, when to go, and how to get through the building safely, and what the bus routes are going to look at. He has a brand new map that he's being able to do for buses to send out to parents this week about where buses and drop-offs are going to be. He's very excited about the new map. So we're in a really good place right now. I'm excited, and it looks beautiful. It's great.
Good.
Did I miss anything? You were at the meeting today, Ms. Laker.
No, I was just shaking my head, nodding, not shaking, but nodding. I think you gave a great report. I am very thankful for the community. I know that it was difficult to receive the letter that said we may potentially, and I know some families have been making contingency plans, but as Mr. Hicks said, we are feeling much more confident that we will be able to start school on time. Tomorrow is a big day for us.
Very big day.
In terms of passing the fire inspection. We will, if we are some things that don't for some reason pass, we can try again on Thursday. And, if we have till Friday. So, again, I want to publicly thank Principal Gonzalez. He has gone above and beyond, putting in time, supporting the school, making sure that the project is managed as closely as possible. The minute he could get back in, he's been working out of the high school. He and his staff, his office staff, have been working out of the high school this summer. But the minute they could get in to the building, they have tables set up, temporary desks for the office staff. If anybody knows Principal Gonzalez, he is attention to detail, and he is sending families and staff as many updates as he possibly can. But Mr. Hicks is right. It's not going to look perfect. And much like we said in our letter, if you've gone through a construction project, you know that it's never quite perfect right when you say it's going to end. but we feel confident that the building's going to be ready for teachers on Monday. We understand that our staff needs extra time in order to set up their classrooms. We'll be giving them that time. Typically those days there are some professional development activities, but we're really devoting time for the middle school staff to be able to be working in their classrooms. We will still send a letter out to families by the 23rd, just giving them an update, but obviously if we get really successful news tomorrow, we might be able to send that note out a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think just one little detail is around like the fire alarm system. One of the things that you do in new construction is that you add in a BDA system to make sure the radios work throughout the building. This is just an example of our commitment to making sure that the space is safe for kids. We were going to be putting a new one into the old building as well, that type of system, and the fire department encouraged us and wanted us, rightly so, that has been updated already in the in the old building, and that's part of what took a little longer is to make sure that that system is up and running and works well, and that's part of the testing that's happening now. But we're doing this to make sure that the space is safe for kids to be in. So like once we get that temporary CO, it is a place that we are all officially been said, no, this is a good place for kids to be to do their learning. So I'm excited for that.
Great, thank you. All right, we have the Kittredge Elementary School update.
Yes. So happy to report that the initial PDP, or Product Development Plan, was completed on time and submitted. We had a meeting on August 7th where they let us know that, where we all got copies of it. It's something like 800 pages long, but it includes just about everything you can imagine, site surveys, traffic plans, 3 different approaches that were to be taken, et cetera, et cetera. We went through the different approaches kind of like it became very obvious very quickly that the new construction option was the only one that really would meet all the educational and logistical needs. So that's the one that will be recommended as we go into the next phase. So the next phase is called a PSR. I forget just now what that stands for, but that has a hard date that we don't want to miss because that would delay the entire project. So the subcommittee or the building committee is working diligently to make sure we meet that date to submit the PSR. There's going to be a community meeting in October to gather, based on the results of the PDP, for people to give input as we move towards the PSR, which is the second and more definitive step. Let's see. Right. We went into a lot of detail about the different budgeting methods, and MSBA has certain caps on costs in certain categories, so we need to be mindful of that when we put the next phase plan together. Did I miss anything, Pam?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
So if I could go sort of summarize, you were thinking about whether we could meet the needs rebuilding the school, and you concluded it would be cheaper or more effective to do it with a whole new school.
Yes.
But the question is, where does the finance committee and the manager fit into this? Is that something they're aware of and comfortable with?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. There are 2 pieces to the funding, right? MSBA comes up with part of it, and
Right.
the town has to come up with the rest of it. So that's all, town officials are participating in this school building committee meeting. Melissa is there each time, Lori Burslap's there each time. We have the chair of the finance committees in attendance each time, as is one of the select board people. So it's all coordinated.
Thank you.
The chair of the select board is the chair of the school building committee.
I think it's important to note, Ed, that while Dave and I are representatives of the school committee on those building committees, the building committees actually come under the authority of the select board, and they are running the thing, and we participate heavily, but it's their thing.
Right, correct.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks, may I have you crack that window?
I will.
Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We have a second read on the proposed changes to policy KFE1. This is the change to the updated fee for custodial overtime for facility uses, or facility use fee. If you recall, this has not been updated since 2008.
Madam Chair? I move to amend policy KFE1 as presented in the packet to reflect an increase in custodial overtime costs for events that use our school spaces.
I will second that. Is there any discussion?
I'll just say that we did not receive any comment or any emails that came to us asking any questions.
Okay.
Just a question. So with these increase in fees, which are completely in line with kind of our costs for using, or at least for the custodial points out, in line with our costs for the custodial overtime, will these fees cover any cost? Just want to make sure these fees cover all the costs to the schools for having these, for the usage of the period, or is this?
Cover the custodial fee that we charge when we book the space. This does not change the rate of the cost of using that space. That would be something else that we should look at.
Okay.
But this was an immediate need because, as you saw, we were only charging folks $27 an hour, and yet we were paying custodians $47 an hour.
So this helps stem some of the loss, but you need
Correct.
a chance to look and see other areas
This is
when
so
it
we
comes to
don't lose
rentals.
money.
So we don't lose money. Not looking to
Yeah.
make money, but not lose money.
Right,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, I think another way to look at it, right, this is the variable cost with each event as opposed to the fixed cost of, using up of capital, right?
Yep. But we should recoup that as well, anything for having the building, what other
Yeah.
costs are there
We should
to
look at
running
that.
events? We should
Right.
recoup all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so it's part of the way there, not all the way
Yep.
there, but a big part of the
So
way.
great step.
Yeah.
Step forward.
Yeah, I think it's where I think the ask is a reasonable ask in that if an outside organization is coming to use the space, they should cover the cost of the person that needs to be there to open and maintain that space in a cleanly way, make sure it can be used. It gets back to the way it needs to be for our kids to use it the next day or whatever it might be. So I think it's an appropriate ask.
Yes. All right, are we ready for a vote? Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes,
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And that passes. Our next item is the MOA between the town and the school district. Ms. Lathrop and I met with the town manager and the chair of the select board, as we had this as a first read a couple meetings ago. So we were able to meet on this. There were a couple of changes. I think the ones were under item 2. We added before the expiration of this agreement, before the school shall create an indirect cost analysis. We just knew that this wasn't something we could do immediately. We needed a little bit of time. This agreement is ongoing for 2 years, so this is something that we just needed this wasn't going to happen in FY25. We knew that was not going to happen, so this gave us some leeway time. Was there any other changes that we added to that?
I don't think so. The 2 years, there was one other.
I think the other thing under the number 8, we're just making it very clear that this is a user fee structure to cover under all user fees. This isn't any educational fees.
Correct.
and question, Madam Chair?
Yes.
This does provide for if things that come out of the CLA report that we need to fix more immediately, we will then have to amend this, correct?
Well, I think that comes under number 6.
Right,
Agrees to review
Oh,
the
okay, there
financial
you go.
policies once the financial review is finalized.
correct.
Yep, just want to make sure that's in there, okay?
Correct.
And just on number 8, where it talks, what you were just referencing, Madam Chair, around user fee structures, is that, for example, an example of that, what we were just talking about?
Exactly, that's
Okay,
exactly
so
it.
looking at all this. Okay, perfect.
Our kids aren't our users, it's other people that come in, yes, other people using our spaces.
Perfect.
Madam Chair, so everything here makes good sense, I think. There's one thing that I've wondered about, which isn't in here, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't approve it. But in all the discussion 2 months or whatever it is, 4 months ago, when you could, Mr. Mealy was trying to explain how he tried to balance the budget, and you couldn't distinguish expenditure reductions from increases in revenue. The town, I think, authorizes us to spend certain monies in addition to the appropriation, and I'm hoping at some point we can regularize this.
We did address that with the town manager. There is going to be an upcoming subsequent MOA that is going to address that.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the MOA between the town and the school district regarding, that's it.
Yeah, I'll second
As
that.
presented in the packet.
I'll second that.
Anything else?
Any other discussion?
I just want to note that a number of these things are, although they're like formalized in this MOA, like we're doing them already. Like I know that we already have a member of our staff who's planning on going to the procurement training. We are committed to, we were before this committed to making some changes to our financial policies. We are doing a better job of sharing budget information. Like we've done a lot of this, so it seems like, it feels like redundant in some ways, but also important that we formalize it, I think.
Yeah, and just it's redundant in current months. You
Yes.
said a lot of this is things that maybe should have been happening over time. We would have
Yes.
liked to have been happening over time, especially even from the school committee side. So by formalizing it, we can work to get those processes in place to make sure that
Yes.
it continues, and we can improve them over time, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we're not going to get it right likely the first time or perfect anyway, but we can keep iterating through and improving the communication.
All right, I will take a roll call vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
I vote yes. So we can sign off on that.
Okay.
All right, so we have new business. The first is on policy AC, non-discrimination and harassment. From what I understand, there is updated legal language that needed to be put in here. So that has been put into the policy that we were required to do. You can see highlighted in red what we were required to update into the policy.
And this is when we did consult with Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce in order to have this language, and then we shared this with our town council, who also agreed with the new language.
I'm surprised some of this wasn't in here before.
Right?
This is updated law,
Yes.
law that has been updated, so that is
But
why.
some of
is-
it
But it's like,
seems
wait,
like
we
it-
weren't?
we weren't doing. Yeah, this wasn't okay.
Right?
So it's good to put in there. I'm surprised
Yes.
some of
Yes.
this wasn't there before, but
All right, any discussion or questions on this? And we will,
Just a clarifying question. I'm not
Sure.
like, yes, we need to add all this. My view is that we should add all this in. Is this then impact Ms. Lathrop the way? What are the impacts that this will have on on like Title IX stuff that we do in town? Like that will impact like those structures and policies and things that happen
Correct.
for our kids to keep them safe.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
yes.
Well, if these are what's necessary to comply with existing law,
Right, but
then they'll
that's
have
the
no impact other than to make us compliant.
well, one of the potential impacts of things like of doing these things, which is fantastic and should be here, is also there's an education component and just awareness component. I spent an hour and a half today taking a lot of this training that my company makes mandatory every year, and I went through all the different scenarios for many of these items. So there is there's a cost to that and to go through that. So that level of
That is
professional.
something our staff will do. One of the first 2 days of training, first 2 days before students arrive, is we have online modules for them to view and go through that training. We ARC Ed is who we're working with now to be able to do those trainings. And then Michelle O'Leary is our Title IX not coordinator is not really the right word, but Title IX coordinator, investigator, and she will also help educate our leaders because we have leadership meetings throughout the year, and this will be part of that topic. And then that's also a time that we may bring legal counsel in to review with our principals.
Thank you.
Because it does change, the Title IX laws have changed, and it's important to understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next change is to policy JJF, to the student activity account. Ms. Lathrop, would you like to explain that more?
Yes, so the change on this is in number 2. We're asking to strike the line that's stricken there, and then, stricken, is that the right word? And then add in that the interest may be used to fund the annual audit with the approval of the committee. So we have an annual audit that we are obligated to do. We have reviewed with Jesse guidelines and with town council that this is appropriate language, and it's appropriate to use the interest in that way to be able to conduct that audit. You should have a copy of the audit that Michelle left for you. So it's a comprehensive audit of our student activity accounts. That's what that is.
What paid for this now if it wasn't the interest?
Well,
Was
we
this a
haven't
separate
paid the
line?
bill
Oh,
yet.
we haven't paid the bill.
But we have interest in that account, and it's an appropriate way to use the
Okay,
interest, and so
interest.
we'd like to use the interest to pay the bill.
Fantastic. Is this the first time we've done this audit, or is this a
We
typical
do an audit
standard?
periodically. I believe this big audit is done every 3 years.
Do we have enough interest to pay for the
We
audit?
do. And if you, yes.
And do we have to pay that bill before we do a second read? Or can we wait until the 12th to pay the bill?
Well, the bill needs to be paid.
Right.
But, I suppose we could wait till September. I think, it would be nice if we could, I would appreciate it if you would approve the policy today. I understand it's just a first read, but we would like to be able to pay for work that has already been done. But if not, we understand.
You need a motion to suspend the rules.
We would need a motion to suspend the rules.
I move to suspend the rules so that we can vote on approving this and paying the contractor for work already done in a prompt way.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the proposed changes to policy JJF to have interest earned on the student activity accounts be used to fund the audit of such accounts with approval of the committee, which means you're just going to come back and ask us to do that again and never mind.
Nope, no, it's in the policy.
We have to
Okay.
ask you
It's
anymore.
continuing.
Okay.
Did you approve AC, or did you just do a first read?
That's just a first read.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
Okay. Any discussion?
Why does it just?
So a question on this. Does this mean that every time
Yeah, that's.
you want to, I may have missed it, you may have said it a minute ago and it cut out. Does the superintendent need to come to us each year?
No, this is now written policy that
Do
will
we need-
stand every
do we
year.
need with the
I have a
approval of the
question.
committee?
Yeah, that was my same question. In the red added, I would say, because I'm reading this where it says with the approval of the committee, that you would have to come to us each time to use the
It
interest
does
to
say
fund
with
the
the
annual
approval of the
audit.
committee,
so
so
Yeah.
we'll
I
have
would
to
say
come
we
back.
strike out that after the comma is gone.
Yeah, that's what confused me, Kelly, exactly.
Yeah.
So we would like to amend that policy to take out with the approval of the committee.
I think so, because I think at this point, we've now
Okay.
said this can
Do I
happen, it's
have
policy.
a motion to amend?
I move to strike with the approval of the committee from the proposed language.
Seconded?
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. So
We have to vote on the amendment.
let's vote on the amendment. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich? Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. And any discussion on the motion as amended? All right. So we can roll call vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That is approved. You may pay the bill.
Lucy, thanks.
All right, and we have a first read on several overnight field trip requests, and many of them are coming in so early, which is wonderful.
We're trying to be a little better. There is one, I'm going to apologize.
Yes.
There's one that's in November, but you have several. First one, just sort of through your packet.
The one-
do you want to ask questions? Do you want me to just?
Well, the one that's in November, when do they have payment due?
Where do they go into? Oh, it's for DECA?
Yes.
Okay.
They have not collected payment yet, but they would like to start collecting payment when school begins, I believe. It doesn't look on here as though they have collected any funds at this time.
Do they need to, if we were to approve this at the September 12th meeting, would that be too late?
I think it would be okay. I think what they could do is they could send out to the students and families what the anticipated cost would be and say that they would start collecting after that.
I anticipate I'm fully supporting this happening.
Yeah, I think they can be okay. They can send an anticipated letter to them.
So, may I ask the superintendent, who is they?
Oh, they is Peter Marfone. He is the contact person from North Andover High School, and he would be the one that is organizing this overnight trip.
So, sorry, I thought that you would tell us, who, are we running the trip ourselves? Or are we buying this from somebody?
So these are all field trip approvals, so these all have to be submitted to the school committee. So these are different student organizations. They all field trips that are funded in different ways. Some of them are funded by students, some of them are reimbursed to students. They all have the details and things. We have to approve each and every field trip.
Because they're overnight.
Because they're overnight. You don't have to
Overnight.
approve every field trip
Yeah.
in the district, but any time that we send our children overnight, the school committee has to give approval in order to do that.
So, I'm not sure I'm pleased that we have to do it, but if we have to vote to approve it, I suppose we should know more than it's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's in November. I mean,
Yeah, so a lot of these organizations have come to us each year to do
I
for
see.
the approval. So DECA has traveled many times. It feels like this is a little earlier for them to go on their thing than I think in years past, which is fine. But they're an academic competition group, and they did quite well last year in Anaheim.
I see, right, right,
Which is the
okay.
And Mr.
competition.
Mr. Marcone is a business teacher
Yeah.
in the high school.
And Mr. Moskovich, I will say that this is a first read.
Right,
So
right.
we can ask additional questions to have come back to us before our second read.
I have a question, Madam Chair. So
Okay,
this-
well,
as one of the newer members, or tied with Mr. Masovich as newest member, what as a school committee member are we looking to approve here? I know that's the overnight trip, so I'm just wondering, kind of what are the eyes that we should have as we look at this in question? Are we looking?
You are approving them a time away from school. So what things you might want to look at, I would say, is you want to look at how many days of school they're going to miss. You would want to look at what's the plan for students to make up the work. You would want to look at the cost. You would want to ask questions about, well, if a child if a student couldn't afford this, what other means do you have? You would want to look at, do we have an appropriate chaperone rate to the amount of students that are going? You might want to look at how chaperones how we're funding chaperones to be able to attend. Those are sort of the questions that are there, and then the purpose of the trip. At any time, we can have, these are standard, and just to your point, these are standard field trips that we have done over time. But usually if it's a new field trip that you've never heard of before, and I realize some of you are new, but if it was new to the committee in general, we would usually ask that teacher or staff member who's leading that to come and speak a little bit more about the trip.
Okay.
One of the trips that's well in advance is the trip to the Galapagos. You'll see that's not until February 2026, but that's a very large trip to plan, and that advisor likes to get ahead of the game
Are they looking for chaperones? No.
Every time I read these, I'm like, I want to go on that trip, I want to go on that trip, I want to go on that trip.
And a quick note on that, I'm glad they're going in February. It's the best time to go, from what I've heard, to go to the Galapagos for the weather and the best sea currents to ensure a good time for kids.
I am raising my hand to chaperone. We've heard it here. So we have the music department. They go to their World Festival.
I think
What's in there?
I believe I clicked on one of them because I was curious about the Ecuador one because that was new. If you click on the thing in your, is it in our drive or
Yes, yeah.
you'll see the proposal from the
More.
trip company about what the kids will do on that.
We want to see if there's insurance. What if there's something like if this trip is planned? How do we get the money back? Those kinds of questions.
Are we
Usually
the
there's an
only-
itinerary. Go ahead.
Are we the only group looking at that in terms of, is there insurance or things like that? Are we the last review of that? to
We
make
bring
sure that
them
all
forward to you
things-
because we believe that these meet all the criteria, but you
Okay.
have the final say.
Okay, all right. But all of that's been reviewed and.
Correct.
Okay.
A lot of the abroad trips are through companies that specialize in
School
doing
trips.
doing those things.
But if you have any questions on any of these trips, if you'd like to submit them to Michelle, we can make sure we get those answers for you before the next read.
Thank you.
And Ms. Lathrop, these are all student funded, right? I mean, they're not.
Student
coming-
funded, fundraising, correct.
Yeah, they're not hitting our operating budget.
Nope.
No.
So the fundraisers have to raise extra money for students who can't afford to go?
We have some, they might use some money from student activities, yes, or they'll raise extra funds for students. But we work with families, we wouldn't want students not participate. Mhm. A lot of the organizations have scholarships within that we work with to help sponsor these trips too. After tonight, this is a job that I will be passing on to Assistant Superintendent Ando, as that was my job before, but this will be my last night formally presenting these to you.
Except chaperone.
Oh, except for I want to chaperone that trip.
Thank you for the timeliness and early time of
Yeah, thank you
of
to
these.
the staff, Principal Jackson, who has left, but he made that a commitment to making sure that he got these in a timely manner this year.
Is this, for the most part, all of them, the overnight trips? Or
No,
will there
you'll
be
get
more
a few
that pop
more,
up? There'll be
but
more that pop up?
this is a
Okay.
big bulk of them.
Okay.
All right, so now we have some amendments to the student handbook. The first one is to the non-discrimination and harassment policy in line with Title IX AC that we had approved before. It is quite lengthy, as you can see. All that is in red, which is several pages, is all being added.
Didn't we just look at all this language?
This
20
is
minutes
additional
ago?
language.
So you looked at your policy. So we
Right.
we fixed it in the school committee policy book. This is the student handbook. So you also have to approve student handbooks when there's a substance change in policy or discipline. So that's what this is. And it's a little bit more comprehensive because it's in the student handbook. And again, this was reviewed by McAvoy Nuttall and our town council, and Joyce, McAvoy Nuttall and Joyce, and our town council. Is that right? Is Joyce in that one too? I get my lawyers confused. And again, this was the new regulations that were put in place on August 1st. This
But I
doesn't
shouldn't
have,
be surprised that the language is
very
identical in
similar,
many cases.
correct.
Very similar.
Okay.
Or identical. And then once you don't have to, this is a first read, right?
This is a first read.
Yes, so when you do your second read and are approved, then the student handbook is uploaded to our school website, and principals will also have it on their websites and distribute appropriately.
We don't hand out a paper copy of the handbook anymore, do we?
Unless we're asked.
So we don't need to do this before school starts because we just change it electronically and notify everyone that we've changed
Correct.
the electronic version, so it's always up to date.
Correct.
We don't have to wait to the new school year to hand people new versions of it.
Correct. Yep.
Yay, technology.
The second, sorry, just we'll add in here real quick. The second change is to the cell phone policy and other electronic devices. And if I'm understanding correctly, this is under the middle school only.
Correct. Let me see what page we're on.
This is the very last page.
Okay.
Just the very, yeah.
We all just got a letter about cell phone policy, did we not?
We did.
Again, this is just the middle school, and this is the reason that we're bringing this to you is because this has a disciplinary change.
Can I ask a question
What
about-
page is, does anybody know the page that that's on?
56.
56, it's like the
Thank
last
you.
page.
Can I ask a question about the first part?
Please.
Sure.
I see that the non-discrimination policy has changed to be in line. And it updates some definitions. Is there substantial changes to how investigations happen? Is there like different timelines or different procedures that we follow? Or is it, it's just like updating the language to reflect the new definitions that are there?
Correct, and then there may be some changes in the forms that we're using, and it's the scope of Title IX, so.
Is broader.
Correct,
So more things will come underneath it.
correct.
But other than like the technical changes to the forms and the way we define things, the process that we've been using is
Will
largely
remain the same,
intact.
yes.
Thank you.
So, if I remember the letter that we received, it was a request for a much more substantive review of.
So the letter that,
I guess the reason I'm asking the question is that if we're going to do that, maybe we would wait to change the rules after we discuss the broader policy, or no?
No, I think that, so just to Mr. Hicks' point, Mr. Hicks was talking about the first part of the policy.
yeah.
And in
portion.
terms of the cell phone, the handbook, our handbooks are comprehensive, so we don't have like a high school handbook and a middle school handbook. So this is a change for the middle school. I think that from the letters you received, I received some letters as well. I think that there are some community members that are asking our high school to perhaps look at their policy as well, and elementary looking at some of our policies in terms of technology. But doing that wouldn't, I don't believe, preclude you from voting to accept this new language for the middle school.
Okay.
Ms. Lathrop, I had a question about
Sure.
the cell phone policy. In the middle school, how are these tracked? So say a student is in one class, but then how does another student know if there's been a first offense, second offense? Do they have to report it back to the office each time?
So a first offense, it's submitted to the main office where
Okay.
the student can get the phone back. So once the student has a first offense, then the principals, assistant principals would log that as a first offense for that student. And then if the student had a second offense, so they would again have to go to the main office. The principal has a log, so he would, or assistant principals would know that student had a second offense.
And what process had been was there a process in place before?
I don't know the answer to that.
I know that my kids were under the impression that the rule of keeping them in their locker was the rule that was followed, and that was followed. But I think to me, my impression is that it's the changes in the offenses that's more captured here
Correct, and
is
then there's some disciplinary actions. in
actions
terms
associated
of
with it.
The parent would be confiscated, submitted to the main office, but may have to pick it up where the phone is, and the phone's not allowed back in school. I think there are some more consequences to when a student takes their phone out of a locker, whereas opposed to in the past, it was the student may have the phone in the locker and might visit the office, but there weren't leveled consequences.
Couple of questions.
Sure.
One, is structuring the first offenses here, the structure of first, second, third offense and the escalating consequences, is that in line and acceptable to the state in terms of discipline laws, the newest discipline laws and restorative justice practices that we need to employ and document and do all that? Is this going to pass muster with
We have had this
them?
reviewed by council, and council has accepted it.
Perfect. Second, putting my teacher hat on, as a teacher, I like that there's clear consequences that feel like if I were to confiscate a phone or say to a kid, you need to put a phone away, and this is going to be the consequence that then happens, and that makes me happy. In terms of teacher, knowing that I have support from my administrators so I can focus on the important act of teaching, and not have to be worried about Joe having his phone out all the time. Have we talked about this and discussed it with teacher leaders and teachers in the district? And like, I imagine they want more, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that they're happy to have more clarity in what the rules are so that they can enforce them and feel like they're being supportive.
Correct.
And that the union is good with enforcing these things, or the teachers in the middle school are happy to enforce these things because it's good for kids, and they have the support of the administration to do it and not feel that they're being unreasonable with kids.
Correct. Yes,
Great.
this is something that Principal Gonzalez has been working on with his team at the middle school and brought forward.
Thank you. That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
So I know the letters we received were more aimed toward high school. This
Correct.
doesn't seem like it'd be a feasible resolution at a high school
Right.
level.
I think it looks a little different. It's interesting. So last spring, there were 2 students who had submitted email saying that they were themselves concerned about cell phone use at the high school and that they found it distracting and looking for the district to do something. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk to our student council reps, to talk to the reps that are on, school committee here. I think this is a great opportunity. I plan to talk to Ms. Holman about it, who is our new interim high school principal. I think it's a great opportunity for her and her leadership team to see how it's affecting students in the high school, to get some of their opinions and to develop a plan together. That makes sense for them.
I also, I think like there's an important like multi-pronged approach we have to think about like whose job this is. Like as a teacher, I want to have clear rules I can enforce because I know that's important for my students as a whole. As a parent, I also appreciate when others showed me how to put restrictions on the phones and limit their time and do. And I feel like there could be some parent education, parent university stuff we can do there. Like how do you set up a kid's phone when they get one for the first time in middle school to make sure that it doesn't become that distraction in the classroom, and like what are those limits that we can explore, because I think that can be some confusing things for people, and I like that could be helpful so that we can work together towards making sure our kids can stay focused in class.
I think we probably need to talk about this in the elementary as well. I know some of the elementary principals sent in their newsletters last year those very same things, lots of times during holidays. Sometimes kids are getting the smartwatches or the phones and talking about those pieces. So I do think that this is a bigger issue, and that we need to look at this pre-K to 12, because the reality is you see there are lots of reasons why kids may or may not have phones. And I think the other thing we want to talk about is that social media has a place in our world. We all know it has erupted. I have moments of social media. I think we all have that. I think that students, it has to be, I didn't grow up with that, but I think must be very challenging to be a student in school these days, where they need some support and they need some guidance from the schools to be able to help them to be able to make the right choices. I think there are students that probably always wanted to keep their phone in their locker and understand what those rules are. But the way social media works now is that it's challenging to be a student and not, if your friends have their phones or if their friends are making choices or if you didn't get the text about some group thing, it can be very hard to be a kid these days and to be left off of that text thread or something like that. Our responsibility as a school district, we believe, is to help students as they're making those really wise choices so that they continue to make those wise choices, and so that we're saying these are the rules for everybody. It's a little bit easier to I don't want to get in trouble, right? These are the rules, and that's what we teach kids about anything, right? We follow the rules for a reason. And we need to support our students in the high school as well, because we heard from families last year, especially as there are events that happen in the world, and what kinds of pieces of information are sort of coming across our phone. What you see on Instagram and TikTok, that's not always the truth. Just because it's on Instagram doesn't mean it's real. and we have to do some education. And I think that may be something that comes out of some of that social emotional behavior academy as well. It's certainly something that I know in the Building Respectful Communities committee that this district has been talked a lot about. But it's hard to grow up right now with a lot of the demands of social media, and I think that the more that we can do to have a very clear policy, and you'll see a lot of schools. I mean, I just saw in the newspaper last week or the beginning of this week, Methuen just put something in place. I think it would make sense for us to really look more closely at a pre-K to 12.
And I agree that our student representatives, I mean, when we talked about the vaping policy, they were integral in being our eyes and ears and really thinking outside the box about that. And I think they would be an integral part in this discussion and really thinking outside the box and working with the students and working with us and in administration in that as well.
And we need families to help and cooperate. It is tricky, right? You want to know where your kids are. That is one of the reasons that you have cell phones. You want to be able to be in contact with them. But, it's really clear in this policy that you can still get in contact with your child. You can call this main office. We can get messages to your children. And we're asking families to support us in these policies to help us to keep our schools safe for all kids.
So I have a question, Ms. Lathrop. Are we looking into best practices at those other grades?
Yes.
Best practices for younger kids and best practices for high school?
Yes.
Is that what you said, that we have somebody's looking into that?
Yes. That will
Okay.
be part of our work this year.
Okay.
So just a question on the policy. So the first paragraph, it's on cell phones. It says cell phones and other non-academic electronic devices are not allowed. And then just where it lists first offense, it says the cell phone will be confiscated. What if they're using another non-academic electronic device, iPad, for example? Will that also be confiscated? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the term cell phone is inclusive of any electronic device that they have that they shouldn't be using.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? I mean, I just
So-
called it out.
To like a smartwatch.
It called it out
in there.
Yes.
in the title, but then in the first offense, it only talked about collecting
Like a
cell
smartwatch,
phones.
if you were texting,
Any of
I'm
that.
assuming on a smartwatch.
All right, so maybe updating to include whatever language we
Include the
use.
no-
It's
the
inclusive.
non-academic
Electronic devices. Yeah.
Just so we're.
You're on a first.
Because someone will
Rock
look
solid.
at this and go, "You can't take
Yeah.
my iPad. It's not here."
Not listed.
Right, and you'll have a student like that, you can guarantee it, right?
His name's William.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, this is a first read, so we'll
Yeah,
correct that.
absolutely.
And if you have any other questions, please forward them to Michelle. And again, families and
well,
communities, we encourage questions from you too.
Just a quick question, this is the step we need to take. Are we, and I don't want to vote on it tonight, will the existing cell phone policy for the middle school, is that, I just wonder about the first 12 days of school until,
I
because we
think
don't
we'll
need
be
to get to
okay.
September.
We'll be
Principal
busy.
Gonsalves is going to be okay
I
with
think they're
what's
going to be
there,
okay.
and
I mean, I
we'll
think
figure it
that,
out.
we can talk. It's the same thing about computers, right? We talked
Right.
about having our students be more mindful of their computers and being more respectful of their computers. We have a responsibility to deliver curriculum and education to our students, but we also have a responsibility to help them understand what community and understand what school rules are, and that's what a lot of the first few days of school are going over some of the school rules. This is how we take care of our computer. If this is, if you throw it in class, you're not going to have another computer, and sort of reviewing these are, but, I think a middle school student is very capable of comprehending, hey, these are some proposed changes, and we just want to review them with you because it's likely that these might go into effect. Yeah.
Very likely.
One more question on the policy. So it talks about in the second and third offense that the parent will have to come in, I guess I'm assuming to the main office to pick up the phone. Is that from the assistant principal as well as who is the parent picking the phone up from? I'm just wondering because it's part of this is it's a process, right? And if your kid keeps using their phone, the parent has to keep coming in.
Correct.
So
they
they're
would be
going-
meeting with one of the principals.
One of the
assistant
principals, okay.
assistant principals, yes. They're really diligent. They'd be calling them, letting them know, and then you have to come and pick it
Schedule a
up.
time, leave work.
Yep.
While the school is still open to go get a phone to make it
Correct.
not a lot of fun. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Don't make me come down there.
Yeah, don't make me come down there. All right. Do we have any other public comment?
Stanwood, Route 43. Stone Cleave Road. First, I want to commend the committee on selecting Pam Lathrop as our interim superintendent. I've known Pam for at least 16 years, maybe more. I can't figure it out. I'll have to talk to her about that. When she was here in North Andover previously, as the principal of Franklin School, she was an excellent leader. The staff loved her as well as the parents, and her school was always the top academic elementary school in our district, consistently. We always thought she was cheating, but I'm sure she was well above that. The second thing I wanted to talk to you for a moment about is public comment. So here I am sitting at second public comment, Dave, and that's why we did this years ago, so that people could respond to things that happened in the meeting. And I think that's a useful thing to do. You can make your own decision about that. I've tried to encourage the select board to do that for the last 5 years and haven't had any success yet, but I'll keep trying. I would caution you to try to respond to public comment in that same meeting. We always tried to get really disciplined on the school committee to respond in the next meeting. So we would try to, take the public comment and then specifically respond to what we had heard in the prior meeting. So the people, if they were, interested in paying attention, they could say, okay, here's was something they said about what I had said in the prior meeting. If you start trying to do it in the same meeting, it's hard to keep that under control. It really gets out of control fast. So I would just encourage you to think about a different kind of a process. Responding is good. I think the timing is important. The third thing I would say is that to Ms. Cormier's point, superintendent selection, you've got to get that right. There's no question about that. That is, I think, the most important thing a school committee does, in fact, do. That's probably the most important job. So I've been the chair of 2 superintendent search committees, both of which ended up in hiring a superintendent. And I thought they were really good candidates, Christopher Hoddle and Dr. Jennifer Price, both of whom I thought were excellent superintendents. For a variety of reasons, that didn't turn out to necessarily be the case. And in thinking about it over a long period of time, the one thing that I think has stood out to me is the sort of the most salient characteristic of somebody that we're looking for in a superintendent, and that's empathy, more than any other characteristic. Skills, yes, experience, yes, education, yes, but I think empathy is the one thing that's most important, and where we've had superintendents that didn't quite make it for a variety of reasons. It was due to maybe a lack of that, at least the perceived lack of empathy. So I would just encourage you to think about doing that and really putting that as one of the top criteria you're looking for in a superintendent. The other thing I would comment on, Mr. Moskowitz' comment about the MASC, in the first search that I led that ended up hiring Christopher Hoddle, we did use the MASC. And I thought they were very helpful in sort of educating the school committee about the process. But in the end, we ended up doing the work mostly ourselves, and that was fine. And then in the second search that I led, we didn't use any consultants at all and did just fine. As a matter of fact, I think we actually had more candidates submit resumes for that search than we did in our first search when we had people helping us. So consultants are not a bad thing, they're a good thing, but I think there's a lot to be said for just, doing it yourself. And there's a lot of, we have a lot of past experience about how this happens, but I think, taking the free offer and getting some free education is not a bad thing. And then you can decide where to go from there. Do you want a consultant? How do you want to do that? So, I would just, encourage you to maybe take that first step. It's a good education, and they're very, you can see from the material that the chair gave you that, they have a comprehensive plan. They know how it all works. But, it might be good to just get started with that and then see where it goes. We've done all those things in the past. We've had public forums. We've gotten teachers and community members and all kinds of people to come in, and that's very valuable so people think they get to buy in. I mean, they think they're being heard and they're getting to contribute. That is extremely important. And doing that earlier is better than doing it later. So, that's a good, encouraging thing to do. But, I think a little upfront education wouldn't be a bad thing. That would be my suggestion. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I could not concur more with what this gentleman just said, but I also believe it's very important to have public comment both at the beginning and also at the end. I've been to over meetings where this was not allowed, and I believe that's very important to have both, so members of the community have a chance to share their thoughts, ask questions after hearing what has been discussed at the meeting. I believe this is what democracy is all about, letting the community be able to share their opinions and not having an oligarchy where a few members decide for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich? Mr. Brown?
Yes?
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. We are adjourned.